Recently, Pope Francis gave a message on January 1st. It's a tradition from the 60s where the Pope would give a message on January 1st, considered a World Day of Peace. And in this message, one of the things he said, I was reading this in a Reuters. I like to pull up Reuters and read the headlines, see what's going on. And so I read some of his words in the speech. And he referred to violence against women is an insult to God. And I think we can understand and appreciate what he's saying there as far as his encouraging people to support women and to help protect women. And that's a very important message. Now, I would like to expand the thought a little bit on that, to talk a little bit more about God. What is God? What is spirit? What is source? Is God really insulted? And talk more about recognizing the divine in women and in all people. Sound good? So, one of the reasons I want to comment on God being insulted. Now, what does that mean? It means that it's disrespectful to God, basically, when a woman is mistreated. And we can understand that. God created everybody. God created men. God created women. And if you really believe in God, you're going to want to treat everybody with respect, right? So that makes perfect sense. Now, what I don't care for is the whole idea of God being insulted, that perpetuates in my mind this being who is keeping a little black book of wrongs, So it's like almost fear. It's almost like fear, more fear of you better watch out, you better not cry, because God's going to get you. And that perpetuates this Old Testament idea of God. Not just Old Testament. Other people believe God like that too. This sort of being who's going to punish people, who's wrathful, who will... The Old Testament God, destroyed people because they didn't live the way God wanted them to live. And that just perpetuates fear. It's hard to love something that you're afraid of. Let's look at that. God is infinite. Whatever name you want to call it. Spirit is infinite. It's created trillions of universes or galaxies, right? I mean, it's infinite. And the Hindus, the yogis, talk about God being Satchidananda, conscious, eternal bliss, joy. The Bible, the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, primarily the New Testament, talks about God as love. God is love. But even in the Old Testament, there are phrases like, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Right? Everlasting. Not if you just do what I want you to do. Everlasting love. So how can that huge, everywhere present, greater than all, possibly be insulted? No. See, we've created God in our image rather than really understanding the real nature of God. Where Jesus, the way shower and teacher, said it rains on the just and the unjust. Like gravity. Gravity holds everybody in their seat. Saint and sinner, so to speak. Saint and sinner. So getting a bigger understanding of God and spirit and recognizing that it's a presence of love. It's a presence of love. I'm reminded of that little Sunday school boy who just studied the Old Testament, and now they were studying the New Testament, and he went home, and Mom was like, hey, what did you learn today, Timmy? And Timmy's like, wow, Mom, we're studying the New Testament, and God sure did get nicer as he got older. That's what it seems like, right? But it's not God changing, it's our understanding of God that's changed and is expanding. So maybe the message, I trust the message, the way Pope Francis put it, is the way a lot of people need to hear it because of where they are. But let's expand our understanding of this presence. It's not something that we need to be afraid of, that's keeping a black book looking over us. And I think it's important that we understand that because everything comes out of this presence, that means we have come out of this presence. In fact, we are this presence living itself as us. It's not like God's over here or up there and God created men and created women and creatures and everybody, you know. No. This presence is expressing in and through as every person. It's expressing as men, it's expressing as women, it's expressing as people who are in transition, it's expressing as every being on the planet. Every soul is an expression of this presence. And when we understand that about women, when we understand that about every person, then we have a natural respect of ourselves and of others, right? When you really respect yourself, you're not going to mistreat other people, not intentionally. And when you become aware of it, you want to shift it. You want to change it. You want to be better and do better. And that's all it takes. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to slip. But when we acknowledge that Spirit as being us and as being every person, then we naturally want to be more respectful, more loving, more caring. We want to protect people who need protection. We want to stand up for what is right because that's inherent inside of us. That's what our heart really longs for, is to do that. And I believe that rather than using fear, God's going to get you, instead of using fear, to recognize that people who do harm women, they are harming themselves, ultimately. I mean, I think that understanding that there are spiritual principles in the universe, that as you sow, you reap. You know, it's not that God punishes anybody. It's that whatever we sow, we reap in life. And when we harm other people, because we're one, there's one presence and one power, we're harming ourselves. Jesus said it another way. He said, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. In other words, if you harm another individual, guess what? It's coming back at you eventually. But even deeper, how can you harm another person and feel good about yourself? I don't think it's possible. A man who harms a woman, or a woman who harms a woman, or anybody who harms anyone, inside they're going to feel, I believe, a sense of disrespect for themselves. Because they're not recognizing the divine in another person or in themselves, something is missing. They're missing something. And so they're not going to be happy. They're going to, I imagine, feel a sense of self-loathing. You know, some of these movies and documentaries I watch about these people who are criminals, you know, that's just what they do. They're criminals. You can have all the jewelry and clothing and houses and whatnot in your life. How can you possibly feel good about yourself inside when you know you're hurting other people for your good? So that's why I don't think we need, you know, I think that people hurt themselves. They frustrate their divinity when they hurt women or when they hurt other people, when we hurt people. we hurt ourselves. And so here's an interesting point too, is that since we're all created in the image of God, we all have male and female energies inside of us. Book of Genesis says, God created man in his image and likeness, male and female he created them. It doesn't say God created men, women, people in transition. It doesn't say God created separation. It said male and female he created them. In other words, we all have male and female energies inside of us. We're all expressions of both. And because spirit is the source of those energies, spirit is also contains those energies. Now you can look at the feminine energy within yourself as symbolic of love, as symbolic representing intuition, representing compassion, representing empathy, representing imagination. You know, those are some qualities that we can associate with that feminine aspects within us, creativity. And we have masculine energies in us too, which you could associate with logic or reason or organization and discipline, some of those qualities, willpower. And we have them all inside of us. So recognizing spirit expressing as every person is also recognizing that every person has those energies inside of them. I mean, we all know certain individuals, no matter what sex they are, who may have more of some than others. Doesn't matter what sex they are, where they are in their life. Or, you know, it's all inside of us. Every person. Every person. So recognizing the Spirit of God within every person, I think when we have that, we naturally want to be loving. We don't want to hurt other people. We don't want to hurt ourselves. We want to live in harmony with ourselves. People who hurt women are frustrating their divinity, or hurt anybody, frustrating their divinity. And that is painful. That's suffering. Jesus respected women. It says in the Bible that women ministered unto Jesus and his disciples of their substance. In other words, there were women who supported his ministry financially. There are lots of incidents in the Bible of Jesus' interaction with women. You know, before Jesus came on the scene, the ancient Hebrews believed that women didn't have a soul. And they treated women and children as basically property. That's how they were treated. Then Jesus came on the scene, and he treated women with respect. They were a part of his ministry. He loved women. Women loved him. He loved everybody. That was his message, right? That was his example. Martha and Mary, you know, we know that story. He's visiting Martha and Mary. Martha's busy in the kitchen, and Mary is sitting with Jesus, communing, interacting. Mary Magdalene, she could be considered the foundation of Christianity. Why? Because she's an example of the transforming power of spirit. She had been had difficulties in her life. She had troubles in her life, and she was transformed. And she became the first person to see Jesus after his resurrection. Yes. One could say she is the foundation of Christianity. Yes. You know, the importance of women, you see it in the life of Jesus. And people distort stuff, you know. They distort, they read into what they want to read into. But you can find that throughout. Jesus respected women, he respected men, he respected the spirit that was in and expressing as every person. He cared for his mother. He loved his mother. I think how you feel about your mother can also impact how you are with feminine energies and so on and others, right? He loved his mother. Remember at the wedding at Cana, they ran out of wine, and his mother knew Jesus' abilities, and she's like, Jesus, how about changing the water into wine, And Jesus said, woman, it's not my time yet. Now, he didn't say woman like, woman, it's not my time yet. No, he didn't say it like that. The way he said woman was it was a term of respect in his day to his mother. And when he was on the cross, who was he thinking about? He was thinking about his mother. He looked at his disciple John and he said, he was talking to his mother, behold your son and behold your mother. He wanted John to take care of his mother. He wanted them to connect and to support one another. Jesus loved his mother. And it's important that we recognize within ourselves, where are we? How loving are we? This is where it's going to start, isn't it? It starts with every individual. We want women to feel safe and protected. We want everyone to feel safe and protected. We've got to be safe and protected. We've got to be a loving place, a peaceful place, a gentle place within ourselves. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that has a lot of violence in its language itself. Our language, according to Marshall Rosenberg, who taught nonviolent communication around the world, went to Palestine and worked with different groups, and all over, went to Ireland, worked with all kinds of different groups. And one of the things he points out is that the language that we have been conditioned with and raised with contains violence, judgments that we use, judgments of, oh, what an idiot, labeling, naming, selfish, self-centered, jerk, you name, all those words that are in our language, are in our minds, so arrogant. Any kind of judgments like that. We judge and blame instead of looking in our heart and asking for what we need and want. That's one of the things that humans do, is instead of asking for what we need and want, we blame and judge. It's really a frustration that comes through us, blaming and judging. So being more aware of of the violence, and see, we tend to think of violence as just physical. It's more than physical. It's thoughts, it's words. Words can be just as violent. Oh, I wouldn't say just as violent, but very damaging, right? Very damaging. Words. So what kind of thoughts do we have? Are we judging? This is one of the reasons I think Jesus said, judge not, but judge with righteous judgment. He, in other words, stop labeling people. Stop limiting them with your judgments. Because notice what happens when we judge. We don't feel very good. There's usually anger there. There's usually frustration. There's usually other feelings inside of us. And that leads to words, that leads to behaviors that are hurtful. So we got our hands full, don't we? Because we live in a culture with those words as part of our language, the way of thinking. Everybody is thinking that way. Now it's expressed in obscenity. You hear it in movies and TV, and people are saying it to each other, which is basically judgments. You're an idiot. This is violence in our own thoughts. So I would encourage us to be aware of those kinds of thoughts, to be aware of how it exists in the culture, and then to be aware of what is my need and want that's not being met inside of me, that's leading to my judgments and my blaming? What is it that I'm wanting? You know, what is inside of me that's not being met? Because that's where the energy would be best focused, rather than blaming and judging, because that keeps us stuck. That makes us a victim. Make sense? And then next is to be in touch with that feminine energy inside of it, and to be in touch with our heart, to be in touch with our emotions, our feelings that are inside of us. I was reading an article a number of months ago about misogyny, which is extreme dislike toward women. And one of the causes, the article was saying, is men who are out of touch with their emotions. That in our culture, men have been raised to push down emotions, to feel, you're not supposed to cry. Don't cry, that's weak. Don't express emotions, repressing emotions. Now, I can understand that. Even metaphysicians can get into that stuff. I remember when I was in ministerial school, 1991, I sort of felt, this is probably exaggerated in my mind, but I sort of felt dead from the neck down at times. And I think it was from just trying to be positive, and not knowing what to do with emotions, because you can't be positive all the time. You're going to have anger, you're going to have hurt, you're going to have other emotions that come up inside of you. And what are you going to do? You can go, oh, I shouldn't be that way. No, that doesn't help. That's a layer of negativity on top of negativity. You got to let it flow through you. You got to be present to it and, be able to observe it and go, okay, I'm feeling some anger. Anger's coming up. I feel it. Or sadness, or grief, or fear, or anxiety. Okay, I see it. Let me just watch it and let it pass through me. Now, you might, once you observe it and feel it, choose a positive attitude and try to shift it, but you're not repressing it. You're not denying it. And so in this article, the person said that a lot of people, a lot of men have repressed those emotions, and therefore that somehow impacts how they treat women. Now, I think that everyone could probably say that to some degree. I've known a lot of people who I've known women who repress the emotions. I've known other people who repress those emotions. And, so it's something for all of us to look at and to be more in touch, to be an observer of those emotions rather than reacting from the emotions. You're making me angry. You're making me sad. You're making me afraid. No. Get in touch, feel it, let it flow through you, and then choose whatever attitude you want. And I think it's important, a positive attitude, that we get in touch with those emotions. Because if we're out of touch with our emotions, we're out of touch with compassion. We're out of touch with our intuition. Because it all flows through us. Remember that show where you could pick a door behind doorway number 1 or doorway number 2, a game show, right? Which one do you want? Doorway number 1, doorway number 2, door number 3. And then they pick a door and it opens up and there's a new couch, or whatever is behind there, a new car. Well, we tend to think, maybe I'm mixing my game shows up. Anyway, we tend to think that our emotions are like we can push negative emotions behind door number 2 and just open up door number 1 on the positive emotions. And you can't, because there's not 2 doors, there's only 1. It all has to flow. And if we're repressing stuff, because I'm not supposed to feel angry, or sadness is weakness, and I've known women who felt that way. They don't want to show sadness because it indicates weakness, vulnerability. Well, if we repress it, then we block the intuition, we block the compassion. Our hearts are not alive. Yeah, but as we allow our hearts to be more alive, we may be more sensitive, We may feel more, but hey, that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing to be able to feel more. So being more in touch with our hearts can help us to be more compassionate and more loving, and to recognize that all people, women, men, people in transition, are whole persons. They're whole persons. One of the problems, I think, is by being out of touch with our emotions, is that women have been sexualized, meaning they have been looked at as objects and are looked at as objects by many people. The people who hurt women particularly. Rather than seeing another person, seeing a whole person, a person who has a brain, who has feelings, who has hopes, who has desires, who has imagination, who has goals, who's intelligent, who can be compassionate and loving. Seeing the whole person, not seeing a woman or a man or anybody as someone who is just for your physical satisfaction. No, it's seeing another human being who feels, who hurts, who loves, who has hopes, who has dreams, who has desires. It's recognizing the other person as a spiritual being, as God living herself as that person. And so I think getting a bigger view of God. God's not insulted. You don't have to be afraid of God, but recognize that Spirit is everywhere present, in all and through all, and recognize that presence is being you. It's being every person on the planet. And I think as we know that about ourselves, we have greater self-respect for ourselves, and we have greater respect for others. And recognize that violence is something that happens inside. It starts in the mind. It starts in the heart. And we all can do better at recognizing what kinds of thoughts are we entertaining? What kind of thoughts are we thinking? What kind of words are we saying about people? Are they violent? They don't have to be, I'm going to kill that person to be violent. No, they can be, what an idiot. How stupid. These are judgments. And I'm not saying it's easy, it's challenging, because that's the culture we live in. But if we aspire for something better, then let's watch those thoughts. Let's watch what we're saying inside of ourselves about others, and try to shift more. And okay, what's the need that's not being fulfilled here? What is it that I really want or am hoping from this person? And then being in touch with emotions so that we can allow that feminine energy of compassion, of love, of intuition to flow through us and enliven us, and we can be more compassionate. I'd like to conclude with a quote from Matthew Fox, who was a prolific author and spiritual leader. He said, "When the sacred masculine is combined with the sacred feminine inside each of us, we create the sacred marriage of compassion and passion in ourselves." Let's get still. Father, Mother God, we acknowledge your presence and activity in and through us. And we thank you for your guidance and direction in our lives. We're so grateful to remember that we are each spiritual beings, that all people are spiritual beings. And we thank you for your guidance and direction in helping us to recognize that in ourselves, to be kinder and more loving to ourselves. We're open and receptive to your healing that heals us of our wounds, so that we can truly be more loving, to be more of who we really are, to be kinder, to be gentler, to let our light shine in a brighter way, and to see that light in all people, to feel love, compassion, empathy, caring, joy, delight, wonder, magic in all people, to see that for everyone. And we know and trust that the healing is taking place, that we are part of this healing activity, that a transformation is truly happening inside of us and inside of our world. And we send out love and light to all people everywhere. May they be healed of their hurts, of their pain. May they all awaken to the truth that makes them free. And so it is. Amen. Just want to take a moment to thank Eddie Watkins Jr. for being with us again today, and also Annie Sims, who's been with us for the first time. Thank you for your wonderful music today, and thank you, those of you who are in the space this morning, for singing and dancing and meditating and doing all that good stuff with us this morning. And those of you doing that online with us, thanks for being with us today. Let us go forth today, letting that loving light express, letting that heart of compassion and respect for all people shine within us. This is how we create a safer, more beautiful world together. Please join me in knowing the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. God bless you, and namaste.